What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to talk about what's happening with the overall market and some big factors to watch for. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY in uninvested cash. This offer ends at the end of March. Anyways, let's talk about the market. So, we're trying to push during the pre-market as we talked about yesterday, but I'm going to be watching to see if we form an inverse head and shoulders on SPY because we have some market moving events that are coming out. There's two main catalysts for the market. So number one, today is Monday, March 3rd, 2025, the first Monday of March this year. And just keep in mind that at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 15 minutes after the stock market opens, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI report that's coming out. That's going to be very important for the way in which the market's going to continue to move. Then at 10 o'clock a.m., we have the ISM Manufacturing PMI, manufacturing employment, new orders and prices all coming out. This is going to be very important for inflationary data, so make sure you guys pay attention to this. But the main point is that at 9:45 and then 10 a.m., we have some data coming out that could cause some volatility in the markets. These manufacturing pieces of data are very important, and once again, it affects inflation and our view of this current sector. So keep that in mind. Look for some volatility for the first 15 and 30 minutes after market open. That's the first main factor for the markets, this data coming out. Factor number two is going to be Donald Trump and what he has to announce with these tariffs. So Donald Trump just announced that he wants to implement 25% tariffs on automotive imports from Canada and Mexico by April 2nd. However, there is something else that's worth mentioning. That is, Donald Trump is still talking about what's going to happen with these tariffs, and the official tariffs for Canada and Mexico should be imposed tomorrow, according to reports. And the last thing that Donald Trump has said, but things are still being decided according to others out there, such as our Commerce Secretary. So what's going on is right now, the last thing that Donald Trump said was that the last time he spoke about this, that his tariffs are going to be coming out very soon at a rate of about 25% on imports from Mexico and Canada, and additional ones for China, and they're supposed to take effect on Tuesday. So they're supposed to take effect tomorrow, the new tariffs, okay? So keep that in mind. That's when we should be looking at them. Now, I don't know if this is just for negotiation or if Donald Trump's officially going to impose them. We'll have to just wait and see. But for now, that is what the schedule is telling us. Tomorrow, we have these new tariffs coming out. Now, the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, is saying that the administration could, however, reduce the rate. So, like I said before, there's a lot of uncertainty about these tariffs. Do they come out tomorrow? Is it going to be at a lower rate? So, we're still trying to figure that out. And that's why we're going to be listening to what Donald Trump has to say today and tomorrow. I think it's very, very important to listen to him. And that's why it's going to be another big factor for the markets. So, keep that in mind. Later on for the week, there's going to be lots of jobs numbers coming out, so I'll talk about those as well. But for now, the tariffs and then our manufacturing numbers are the two big things for today. Warren Buffett did give a speech, and he mentioned that he wasn't really happy about them. He did say that, at least in the past, he did criticize them, saying that they could raise costs for consumers and fuel inflation. But that was actually a while back. So I just want to say that with him saying this, there is truth behind that, right? We could all agree that there's going to be another increase in many prices because of these tariffs. For the short term, the rate at which inflation goes up will go up for the short term, and then as time goes on, we'll have to see what the long term effects are, and how much revenue the government makes, and etc. Just keep that in mind. That's just what's being talked about right now in mainstream media. Besides that, we just have these earnings coming out. We just have like Target and Best Buy on Tuesday. Everything else is going to be quite minor for the rest of the week, but just keep that in mind. Anyways, so what's happening to the markets? I just want to mention that it depends on our levels. If we continue this push, I'm looking for an attempt to get to about 598. And our main support's at 594. If that fails us, we're looking for a move closer to 590. Below 590, I'm looking for this imbalance fill towards like 587 and 585. Those are your key levels. I think that there's a good chance that we try to go a tiny bit higher here, but we're going to be watching this resistance. And then I'll be watching to see if we get a possible downside move. It's possible we might get a downside move first before we try to bounce like this, forming a very nice inverse head and shoulders. So I'll be watching this very closely, at least for the markets. And I'll be giving you guys updates about this possible inverse head and shoulders. So it depends on the manufacturing numbers. Expect a big move at 10 o'clock a.m., whether it pumps or dumps us. If we could break 598, then we could continue to get up to 602. If we can't hold above 598, we could be dipping to 594 to 590 again before we try to see some kind of bounce. And it also depends on what Donald Trump says about his tariffs, so just keep that in mind once he gives his speeches. So with that being said, I think that the most likely move is to go a little bit higher, but I'm going to be looking to see if we form some kind of downside move or not. We might form a downside move because of manufacturing numbers or because of Donald Trump's speech on tariffs. And then even if we do, whether we get a big dump or a small dump, it depends on what is said. As long as we don't lose these lows or even like close below them, okay, as long as we try to get close to them and bounce, or if we just see a small dip and bounce, we're going to be completely fine. And I'm just eyeing the possibility, the most probable possibility is like an inverse head and shoulders here. So I'll be watching that very, very closely. So keep that in mind. That's what I'm essentially eyeing. For the QQQ, we have a very, very similar setup. So as you guys can see, we have this resistance around this like 512 area. That's going to be our 20 EMA. So make sure you guys watch that very, very closely. That's going to be key for the way at which we continue to move. So keep that in mind. That's going to be our main resistance. And I do see potential in us to try to get closer to that level. But then as time goes on, right, you're going to be looking to see if we can form a very, very similar move to that of SPY. So just for reference, if we actually look back at this, I'm going to be looking at this resistance at 512.95. See if we get some kind of pullback move. There's a gap down here like this before we try to continue to pump even higher. So I'll be watching these levels very, very closely. So we're looking for like the 513 area. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 516 to 518. If that rejects, we're looking for support at 506 and eventually 502. So I'm looking for a move like this. Once again, kind of like a slanted inverse head and shoulders like move. If that could cause some kind of like bounce or not. But I'm looking for a reversal structure that's trying to form on the QQQ as well as the most likely case. And by the way, when it comes to levels, if we lose 506, we're looking for that move down to 502. Break 513-ish, we're looking for 516, then 518. Could see some kind of push, a small dip to fill this gap before it tries to bounce. Same thing with the Russell 2000. I'm seeing something very similar developing on it. Now, notice we have this gap to fill down here. The gap is going to be very, very key. We'll see if we get a downside move first, like 214. As long as we don't end up losing 210, I want to see this kind of base around like 214 to 212 before it tries to bounce again. Once again, forming this inverse head and shoulders. So this could be like a left shoulder. This could be like a head. And this could be like a right shoulder. So we'll see how that ends up going. So I'll be watching that very, very closely on the charts just to see how things end up moving from here. That's going to be awesome. So just keep that in mind, guys. It's very important to pay attention to those levels. For others out there, we also happen to have ES doing the same thing. It's trying to push right here, but we're approaching that very, very tough resistance near the 6,000 area. And I do want to warn you to be a little bit careful the closer we get to it because of other factors. The first thing is that we are at this trend line. That trend line is going to be a resistance alongside our 50 EMA. You guys can see this trend line is a resistance right here where we rejected many times. So I'll be watching that 6,000 area. The low 6,000s is our resistance. If we break past the 6,000 and hold it, then I'm going to be looking for 6,050. But that's not a guarantee with the manufacturing numbers and Donald Trump's tariffs. What I'm thinking is we kind of touch this, see some kind of like consolidation move like this before we eventually try to break out like that. That's why I'm going to be basically eyeing for like a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. We'll see how big this dip is, whether it's big or small. And then, we're going to be looking to see if we could break out later on. I would like to see a little dip first before we try to bounce. NQ is looking bullish. I'm going to be looking to see if this could go a little higher. We'll have to see if it could hold 20,900. So could be looking for 21,300 as our resistance. We'll see if we get some kind of dip from there. And then once again, continue to form an inverse head and shoulders like this. I'm kind of eyeing a move like this. So watch 21,300 as resistance. If this breaks, we're bullish. If we don't break that, we could turn back down to 21,000 flat before it tries to bounce. So just keep that in mind. Bitcoin's looking a bit more bullish with this accumulation-like structure. We also have this resistance right here at 96,000. Could dip and start pushing for 96,000, so just keep that in mind. For Nvda, we're looking a bit more bullish. I like the fact that we are trying to base right here. However, for the short term, there could be a bearish move. It's possible we dip to like the lower 120s before it tries to bounce back up to this resistance right here at like 126. So it could be like a dip and a bounce that's coming. But overall, a little bit more bullish. If you make a higher low, we're still more bullish, looking pretty good so far. So don't worry too much about Nvidia being a little lackluster compared to the markets. Could dip first before it tries to bounce higher. So it's doing completely fine. Tesla's at resistance right here. We're going to be watching to see if 300 holds. If we break 302, we're looking for 305, then 310. If not, we're looking for this gap to fill down to like 294. So if 300 does not hold, I expect 394 or so. As long as the low does not break at 270, we could just see a small dip in a bounce for an inverse head and shoulders. Keep that in mind for Tesla. Watch those levels closely. As long as 294, as long as we hold around 294 to 290, we could kind of dip and bounce around there. If we lose 270, I turn a lot more. I'll become more concerned. But for now, we're just watching those levels. Apple's at resistance here. We're going to be watching to see if this holds. Watch 240. If it doesn't hold, we could be dipping to 238. So one of those levels should be held before it tries to bounce, whether it's 240 or 238. But overall, this yellow trend line is acting as support. We've been bouncing off of this, which is actually a pretty good sign. So overall, I think we're doing a fantastic job. We'll see if we bounce off 240 or 238 before some more buyers return. For other pieces of news, we have AMD. AMD is trying to bounce right here on, especially on the 4-hour time frame. Just keep in mind we have this gap to fill down here. I think there's a good chance we try to kind of like we could dip to fill the gap before it tries to bounce like this. That's going to be a nice possibility, but it is looking like it wants to test 103 if 100 holds. So just keep that in mind. Coin is kind of complicated. Donald Trump announced the crypto reserves, which is what caused this bounce. But we're going to be watching to see, do we come back to fill this gap? If we end up losing support at 230, we look for 225. We got to hold that. Otherwise, we dump to fill this gap. If we don't end up losing like 230, if we continue to hold that, we're looking for resistance at 240 specifically. Break that, I think we fly to about 254. It could just continue to go. It all depends on the reaction to Donald Trump's tariffs and also what happens with these manufacturing numbers. So we'll see about that. So just keep that in mind. Amazon's more bullish, looking for 215, and we'll see if we reject off this trend line or not, just temporarily. But I do see that it wants to push a bit higher. Meta has support at 658 and resistance at 682. We're in the middle. This could try to push higher, though. I think there's potential in this. Microsoft wants to break 400. If that breaks, I'm looking for an attempt for 404. If we don't break that, we're looking for 390. 394 is our support. So I think it's looking a little bit more promising for a temporary push. Might make a downside move like the market. So might push like this, make a downside move before it tries to bounce. Once again, forming like an inverse head and shoulders as well. So we'll see about that. Google as well could be pushing for like 175. Then we'll see if we get some kind of dip move to fill this gap, so like 172 or below before it tries to bounce. Anyways, that's it for my video. I thank you all so much for listening. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. I really appreciate you guys for your attentions. So I wish for the best for you all. Watch your levels very closely and don't solely trade based off like exactly the pattern that you're predicting. What you need to do is just watch the price action, follow that, let that dictate the way at which you see things, and then we'll see how things end up going. So if we start to look like we're going to reject here, then that's when you could be looking to short. Don't just blindly do anything. You want to have evidence before you make some kind of move. Not financial advice, but that's just what I'm saying. So anyways, have a good one, guys. I'll see you guys very soon, and peace out.